Good day to everyone. Today I will be discussing on the School of Thought in Criminology. It is not surprising that any discussion of the existence of evil behavior in the world would begin with a religious explanation. Since time began, humankind has been preoccupied with what appears to be an ongoing war between good and evil. So prior to the 18th century, explanations of a wide variety of phenomena tended to be of religious or spiritual nature. So Enlightenment thinkers focus on the dignity and worth of individual. So it is a view that would eventually find expression in the law and the treatment of criminal offender. So during the medieval period, the most common explanations for the commission of wrong act is said to be caused by the devil. From this account, method uses in determination of truth or trial were arbitrary and unreasonable. So one of that is the demonological theory. So when we say demonology, it is the study of demons or belief about demons, especially the methods used to summon and control them. And an early explanation of crime is theological or religious. It is based on belief in supernatural or spiritual powers or in laws of nature. And crime has been viewed as a violation of religious doctrine, and that is called a sin or a violation of a sacred obligation. So an individual who commits a crime has been viewed as possessed by evil spirits or under divine wrath. The causes of crime have been based in superstitious belief in which criminals were allegedly perceived as controlled by other worldly forces, and that is the evil. So that is the demonological theory. So we will go now to the classical school. So in the classical school, in the middle of the 18th century, which is the age of enlightenment, social reformers studied and argued and began to look for a more rational approach in imposing punishment, stressing that the relationship between crimes and their punishment should be balanced and fair. And also, social reformers sought to eliminate the barbaric system of law, punishment, and justice. So the classical school was based on the what we call utilitarian philosophy. And there are principles of classical school. Okay, these are the following. All human beings, including criminals, will freely choose either criminal ways or non-criminal ways, depending on which way they believe will benefit them. Criminals will avoid behaviors that will bring pain and will engage in behavior that will bring pleasure. And before deciding which course of action to take, criminals will weigh the expected pain. The other one is criminals are responsible for their behaviors. They are seen as human beings who are able to interpret, analyze, and understand the situation in which they find themselves. And also, criminals act over against the environment. They are not victims of their environment. So another principle of classical school is criminals go through thinking a process whereby they take a variety of factors into account before they make a final decision on whether or not to commit a criminal act. And criminals are totally responsible for their behavior. And the other one is environmental forces do not push, pull, or propel individuals to act. And individuals act willfully and freely. And the offenders are not helpless, passive, or propelled by forces beyond their control. And the last one is each criminal act is deliberate, deliberate one committed a rational, choosing a person who is motivated primarily by pleasure-pain principle. So there are advocates of classical school. Who are these advocates of classical school of thought in criminology? So one of them is Cesar Beccaria. So the full name of Cesar Beccaria is Cesar Bonesana di Beccaria, Marquis of Gualdrasco and Villarejo. He was an Italian criminologist, jurist, philosopher, and politician, and considered as the most talented jurist and one of the greatest thinkers of the age of Enlightenment. He also pioneered the development of a systematic understanding of why people committed crime. So, Cesar Beccaria's book, Essay on Crimes and Punishment, or the De Delite e del Pene, supplied the blueprint, which was based on the assumption that the people freely choose what they do and are responsible for the consequences of their behavior. So his judiciary reform condemned torture and led to the abolition of death penalty. According to Beccaria, the crime problem could be traced not to bad people, but to bad laws. That a modern criminal justice system should guarantee all people equal treatment before the law. He also believe that the behavior of people with regard to their choice of action is based on hedonism or the pleasure-pain principle. So when we talk about pleasure-pain principle, human being choose those actions that give pleasure and avoid those that bring pain. So moreover, punishment should be assigned to each crime in a degree that result in more pain than pleasure for those who commit the forbidden acts. So therefore, the punishment should fit the crime. So the writing of Beccaria and his follower form the core of what today is referred to as classical criminology with the following basic elements. So what are these basic elements of classical school? So first is in every society, people have free will to choose criminal or lawful solution to meet their needs or settle their problems. Second, criminal solutions may be more attractive than lawful ones because they usually require less work for a greater payoff. Third one, a person's choice of criminal solution may be controlled by his fear of punishment. And the last one is the more severe, certain, and swift the punishment, the better able it is to control criminal behavior. So those are the basic elements of classical school. Other advocates of classical school is Jeremy Bentham. So Jeremy Bentham is another classicist and a contemporary of Beccaria, and he also devoted his life in developing scientific approach to the making and breaking of laws. Likewise, Beccaria, Jeremy Bentham was concerned with achieving the greatest happiness of the greatest number. So he referred to his philosophy of social control as utilitarianism. So when we say utilitarianism, it assumes that all human actions are calculated in accordance with their likelihood of bringing happiness or the pleasure or unhappiness or the pain. People weigh the probabilities of present and future pleasures against those of present and future pain. And Jeremy Bentham also developed a prison design known as the Panopticon prison. So, but there are arguments against classical school. What are these arguments? First is unfair. So when we say unfair, it treats all men as if they were robots without regard to the individual differences and surrounding circumstances when the crime is committed. So lahat is pantay-pantay, sabi nila. Okay? So kahit bata pa yan or insane, kapag nakagawa ng krimen, dapat merong parusa. So kaya nasabi nilang unfair ang classical school. Second is unjust, having the punishment or the same punishment for first offender and recidivist. And the nature and definition of punishment is not individualized, and it is considers only the injury caused on the mental condition of the offender. So these are the arguments against the classical school. Okay. So as a summary, this summary points of classical school by especially by Jeremy Bentham. So these are the following assumptions of Bentham. First is people have free will, okay, to choose how to act and what to do. The second is deterrence. So when you say deterrence, it is based on the utilitarian ontological notion because of human being is any of the following. First is hedonist. When we say hedonist, it refers to a person who only seek pleasures and avoid pain. So that is hedonist. Second is the rational calculator. When you say rational calculator, it refers to a person's weighing up the cost or the pains and benefits or the pleasure of the consequences of each of his actions before committing any act. So kaya tinatawag na ang mga tao ay rational calculator. And there are components of deterrence. One is celerity, the second is certainty, and also the severity. When we say celerity, it refers to the speed with which the punishment is applied. Okay. Certainty, it is the concept of making of punishment sure to happen, whether an undesirable act is committed. And severity, it refers to the amount of pain to be inflicted to those who do harmful acts. So these are the components of deterrence. How about the forms of deterrence? So we have two forms of deterrence. We have the specific deterrence and general deterrence. So when we say specific deterrence, it is applied to the individual who committed an offense. The idea that is to apply just enough pain to offset the amount of pleasure gained from the offense. So it is applied only to individual who committed an offense. So in general deterrence, it applies to other potential offenders by showing them that punished individual would not gain from his or her offense. It is generalized. So another summary points of classical school is the swifter and certain the punishment, the more effective it is in deterring criminal behavior, and punishment it is of sufficient severity can deter people from committing crime because the cost or the penalties outweighs benefits, and severity of punishment should be proportionate to the crime. So that is the classical school of thought in criminology. Next is the neoclassical school. So the neoclassical school, which was flourished in 19th century, had the same basis as the classical school, believed in free will, most of whom were British, and saw the need for individualized reaction to offenders. They believed that the classical approach was too harsh and unjust. This school of criminology is a modification of classical theory. It is believed that certain factors such as the insanity will inhibit the exercise of free will. Okay? And perhaps the most shocking aspect of harsh penal codes in early times was they did not provide for the separate treatment of children. And one of the changes of the neoclassical school, neoclassical period, was that children under 7 years old were exempt from the law because they were presumed to be unable to understand what is right or wrong. And also, mental disease became a reason to exempt a suspect from conviction. Although the neoclassical school, unlike the classical, was not a scientific school of criminology, it began to explore the causation issue. Its proponents made the exception to the law and implied multiple causation. Even today, much modern law is based on the neoclassical philosophy of free will tempered by exemption. Okay. So next is the positivist school or the Italian school of thought. So the positivist school originated also in the 19th century in the context of scientific revolution. The positivists rejected the harsh legalism of the classical school and substituted the concept of free will with the doctrine of determinism. So the positivist school focused on the constitutional approach to crime, advocating that that structure or physical characteristic of an individual determine that person's behavior. Since these characteristics of an individual are not uniform, the positivists emphasize a philosophy of individualized scientific treatment of criminals based on the findings of the physical and social sciences. Also, positivism means the approach that studies human behavior through the use of scientific method. And Auguste Comte is considered as the founder of positivist school and sociology. He applied scientific methods in the study of society, from where he adopted the word sociology, and he is also known as the father of sociology. He wanted a society in which all social problems will be solved by scientific methods and research. And also, Augusto Comte believed that large group of people, such as society, being a subject of scientific study and can lead to the discovery of specific laws that would greatly help them. Okay? So, the positivist school was composed of several Italians. Generally, it is associated with Cesar Lombroso, who founded the Italian School of Thought, Enrico Ferri, and Rafael Garofalo. The positivist school presumes that criminal behavior is caused by internal and external factors outside the individual's control. So the scientific methods was introduced and applied to the study of human behavior. Okay. So there are three segments of positivism. So what are the three segments of positivism? One is biological positivism, the other one is psychological, and the social positivism. So when we say biological positivism, it includes the study of the following theories in relation to criminality, like criminal anthropology, phrenology, physiognomy, heredity, somatotyping, biochemistry, blood sugar levels, adrenaline sensitivity, allergies and diets, and substance abuse. So those are under the biological positivism. In the psychological positivism, it relates criminality through the study of the following theories: the psychodynamics or psychoanalytic theory by Sigmund Freud, behavioral learning theories, and cognitive learning theories. And the social positivism relates to criminality through the study of the following theories: the social disorganization theory, the Chicago School theory, and the anomie theory. So these are the three segments of positivism. So there are key assumptions of the positivist school of thoughts. So these are the following. First is human behavior is determined and not a matter of free will. Second, criminals are fundamentally different from non-criminals. The positivist research for such differences by scientific methods. The social scientists, including criminologists, can be objective or values neutral in their work. Crime is frequently caused by multiple factors. And the last one is society is based on consensus and not on social contract. So I will discuss to you the biological positivism. So one of the advocates of biological positivism is Cesar Lombroso. Cesar Lombroso is an Italian criminologist, scientist, university professor, a prison doctor, and the founder of the of criminal anthropology. He was one of the largest contributors to biological positivism and the founder of Italian School of Criminology. And he is widely known as the father of modern criminology, although most of his ideas have been discredited today. It is interesting to examine the sequence of events that made Lombroso, not Beccaria or Bentham, deserve this title, the father of modern criminology, because Lombroso's work closely followed Charles Darwin's theory of man's revolution. So Lombroso contended that just as human beings develop from the non-human animal forms, the criminal was a throwback or mutant to a primitive stage of human evolution. And the criminal was a product of biology, and not much could be done for this born criminal. Okay? Lombroso's positivist approach was scientific, anthropological, and biological. With his research, the legalistic concern of crime advanced to scientific study of the criminal, which in turn became the field of criminology. This accounted for his title of being the father of modern criminology. Now, his theory of the born criminal states that criminals are a lower form of life, nearer to their ape-like ancestors than non-criminals in traits and dispositions. They can be distinguished by various stigmata, which refers to the physical features of creatures at an earlier stage of development before they became fully human beings. The criminal's distinct physical and mental stigmata includes the deviation in head size and shape from the type common to the race and region from which the criminal came, the asymmetry of the face, excessive dimension of the jaw and cheekbones, eye defects and peculiarities, ear of unusual size or occasionally very small or standing out from the head as those of a chimpanzee, nose twisted, upturned, or flattened like a Tim's, or aquiline or a beak-like in murderers, or with a tip rising like a peak from the swollen nostrils, fleshy lips, swollen and protruding pouches in the cheeks like those animals' toes, and the imbalance of the hemisphere of the brain. So the work of Lombroso supported the idea that the criminal was a biologically and physically inferior person. So what are the major contributions of Lombroso? Among Lombroso's major contributions to positivist criminology are the following. First is the theory of atavism. So in the theory of atavism, Lombroso had the opinion that criminals were developed from primitive or subhuman individuals characterized by some inferior mental and physical characteristics such as a receding hairline, forehead wrinkles, bumpy face, broad noses, fleshy lips, sloping shoulders, long arms, and pointy fingers. He called this condition as atavism. And the other contribution of Lombroso is the application of the experimental or scientific methods to the study of criminals. So he spent endless hours measuring criminally insane person and the epileptic skull. Another contribution is the development of criminal typology. Although Lombroso's system of classification is considered crude and not adapted today, he still attempted to categorize criminals. Another contribution is the belief of the indeterminate sentence. Penalties should be indeterminate so that those other born criminals who are incorrigible could be worked with and rehabilitated. And the last one is the application of statistical techniques to criminology. Although crude and with the use of questionable control groups, statistical techniques were used by Lombroso to make criminological prediction. So these are the major contributions of Cesar Lombroso. So according to Lombroso, there are categories of criminal. So what are these category of criminal? First is born criminal. This refers to individuals who are born with genetic predilection toward criminality. Second is epileptic criminals. These are criminals who commit crime because they are affected by epilepsy. Insane criminals, these are those who commit crimes due to abnormalities or psychological disorders. And the occasional criminals. So these are criminals who commit crime due to insignificant reason that push them to do and at a given occasion. So these are the types of occasional criminals according to Lombroso. First is the pseudo-criminals. When we say pseudo-criminals, these are individuals are not real criminals. They have neither any inborn tendency towards crime, nor are they under the influence of any bad crime-inducing habit. Okay, an example of these pseudo-criminals would be a person who kill in self-defense. Another types of occasional criminals is criminaloids. The term criminaloid, sometimes criminoloid, means like a criminal or having a resemblance with the criminal. From this, it can be said that criminaloids are not born criminals but not non-criminals who have adopted criminal activity due to pressure of circumstances and less physical stamina or self-control. And the nature of their crime is not very grave. Next is the habitual criminals. They have no organic criminal tendency, but in the course of their lives, they have developed some foul habit that force them into criminality. Some attributing factors are poor parenting and education or contact with other criminals. Then the last one is the passionate criminals. These are individuals who are easily influenced by great emotions like fit of anger, love, and others. So these are the types of occasional criminals according to Lombroso. Okay, another advocates of positivism is Enrico Ferri. When we say Enrico Ferri, he is a student of Lombroso and best known of Lombroso's associates. But although he agreed with Lombroso on the biological basis of criminal behavior, his interest in socialism led him to recognize the importance of social, economic, and political factors in the study of criminal behavior. His greatest contribution was his attack on the classical doctrine of free will, which argued that criminals should be held morally responsible for their crimes because they have made a rational decision to commit those acts. But on the contrary, Ferry believed that criminals could not be held morally responsible because they did not choose to commit crimes, but rather were driven to commit them by conditions in their lives. So he, however, stressed that society needed protection against criminal acts and that it was the purpose of criminal law and penal policy to provide that protection. Okay. And also Enrico Ferri claimed that strict obedience to preventive measures based on scientific methods would eventually reduce crimes and allow people to live together in society with less dependence on the penal system. And he also argued that criminal behavior could be explained by studying interaction of a range of actors he observed. So what are these range of factors observed by Enrico Ferri? First is the physical factors in relation to such crimes such as the race, geography, and temperature. The second is individual factors in relation to crime like age, sex, and psychological variables. And the last one is the social factors in relation to crime such as the population, religion, and culture. So as to conclude with the a contribution of Enrico Ferri summarizes the following, that social as well as biological factors played a role in criminality. Criminals should not be held responsible for their acts because the factors causing their criminality were beyond their control. And crime could be controlled by improving the social condition of the poor, and to that end advocate the provision of subsidized housing, birth control, and public recreation facilities. Okay. The other one is Rafael Garofalo, an Italian jurist and a student also of Lombroso. So just like Lombroso and Ferri, Garofalo rejected the doctrine of free will and supported the position that the only way to understand crime was to study it by scientific methods. Okay. Influenced by Lombroso's theory of atavistic stigmata, which he found to have many shortcomings. So Rafael Garofalo traced the roots of criminal behavior not to physical feature but to their psychological equivalence, which he called moral anomalies. Okay, according to this theory, natural crimes are found in all human societies, regardless of the views of lawmakers, and no society can disregard that. And also, according to Garofalo, natural crimes are those that offend uh, the basic normal sentiments of probity, okay, which mean respect for the property of others, and pity. When we say pity, the avoidance or causing infliction, not infliction, infliction of sufferings to others. Okay. So an individual who has an organic deficiency in these moral sentiments has no moral force against committing such crime. Garofalo, influenced by the theory of Charles Darwin, Garofalo suggested that the death penalty could rid the society of its maladapted members, just as the natural selection process eliminated maladapted organism. And for those who committed less serious offenses or who are capable of adapting themselves to the society in some measures, he preferred transportation to remote islands, loss of privileges, institutionalization in the farm colonies, and perhaps simple reparation. Okay. Rafael Garofalo was more concerned and interested in protecting society than individual rights of offenders. And his concept of natural crime is known today as crime malainse, or those crimes that are wrongful in nature, which our revised penal code regulates at present, such as the robbery, theft, murder, homicide, and the like. And there are also suggestions of Garofalo. One of those suggestions is that for those whose criminal acts grew out of a permanent psychological anomaly, rendering them incapable of social life, partial elimination of long-time imprisonment for those who fit only for the life of nomadic hordes or primitive tribes, and enforce reparation on the part of those lacks of altruistic sentiments but who have committed their crimes under pressure or of exceptional circumstances and not likely to do so again. So these are the types of criminal according to Garofalo. So first is murderer. Murderers refers to a criminal who kills another person and satisfied from vengeance or revenge. Next is biological criminal, lacks of pity and can be influenced by environmental factors such as the consumption of alcohol or the fact that criminality is endemic to criminals particular population. Deficient criminal, it refers to a person who commits crime against property like thieves and robbers. And the lascivious criminal is a person who commits crime against chastity like acts of lasciviousness, seduction, adultery, and the like. So those are the types of criminal according to Garofalo. So Lombroso, Ferri, and Garofalo are called the holy tree of criminology. Okay. So next is the sociological positivism. So these are the advocates of sociological positivism, the Adolphe Quetelet and Michel Gary. So during the 19th century, some scholars began to search for social determinants of criminal behavior. Among them were the Belgian mathematician Adolphe Quetelet and the French lawyer André Michel Gary. They started what was called the cartographic school of criminology, in which they work independently on the relation of crime statistics to such factors as poverty, age, sex, race, climate, and other demographic factors. But both scholars concluded that the society, not decision of individuals offender, was responsible for criminal behavior. Another advocate of sociological positivism is Gabriel Tarde, another scholar who worked on the relationship of crime and social factors. So he was of the opinion that society played an important role in creating criminal. So however, individual choice and chance were also important to Gabriel Tarde. And this major contribution is the study of the cause of crime, was his concept of the criminal as a professional type. Okay? Sabi ni Gabriel Tarde that the concept of a criminal as a professional type. And he also believed that most criminals went through a process of training before finally becoming a criminal. Dumadaan daw sila sa matinding training bago sila maging isang criminal. Moreover, it was an accident of birth or chance that put them in an atmosphere of crime. So another one is Emil Durkheim. Of all the 19th century writers on the relationship between crime and social factors, none has more powerfully influenced contemporary criminology than Emil Durkheim. According to Durkheim, crime is an inevitable aspect of society. Okay? It could be disappear only if all members of society had the same values. And such standardization is neither possible or desirable. Okay? And he called this concept anomy, from the Greek anomos or without norms. It is a breakdown of social order as a result of loss of standards and values. Okay? So that is anomy. So in society plagued by anomy, disintegration, and chaos replace social cohesion. Okay, and these are the other proponents of positivist theory. We have J.K. Labater, who studied the facial features of criminals to determine whether the shape of ears, nose, eyes, and other distance between them were associated with antisocial behavior. That is what we call the physiognomy. Franz Joseph Gall and Johann K. Sparsim studied the shape of skull and bumps of the head to determine whether these physical attributes were linked to criminal behavior. That is called phrenology, the study of skull and the bumps of the head. And Philip Pinel, one of the fathers of French psychiatry, claimed that some people behave abnormally even without being mentally ill. He also coined the phrase mani sans delire to denote what eventually was referred to as psychopathic personality. Another proponent of positivist theory is Henry Maudsley, an English physician who believed that insanity and criminal behavior were strongly linked. And also Charles Darwin, he claimed that all humans, like other animals, are parasite. Man, according to Darwin, man is an organism having an animalistic behavior that is dependent on other animals for survival. So thus man kills and steals to live. Okay. So next is the Chicago School. The Chicago School arose in the 20th century through the work of Robert Ezra Park, Ernest Burgess, and other urban sociologists at the University of Chicago. Okay. Robert Park and Ernest Burgess identified the 5 concentric zones that often exist as cities grow, including the zone of transition, which was identified as most volatile and subject to disorder. This zone of transition will be discussed in your major subject, theories of crime and causation. And also in 1940s, Henry McKay and Clifford Shaw focused on juvenile delinquents, finding that they were concentrated in the zone of transition. The Chicago School sociologists adopted a social ecology approach in studying cities and postulated that urban neighborhoods with a high level of poverty often experience breakdown in the social structure and institution such as family and schools. And the last one is social disorganization became the theory that explained emergence of crime.